Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. We'll start our service with Shine, Jesus, Shine. Lord, the light of your love is shining in the midst of the darkness shining. Jesus, light of the world, shine upon us. Set us free by the truth you now bring us. Shine on me. Shine on me. Shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this land with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow. Flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light. Lord, I come to your awesome presence from the shadows into your radiance. By the blood I may enter your darkness. Search me, try me, consume all my darkness. Shine on me. Shine on me. Shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this land with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow. Flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light.
Good evening. I guess for the announcements, if you're wondering about anything that happens to be going on, you can check the highlights, and I think there's also emails that get out. Good evening. Tonight, I would like to talk to you about a question that I've prepared a lesson on tonight, and that question is, what is our purpose? What is our purpose as people here on this planet? It is a very important question, and one that many people have tried to answer over the years. One of those many people that tried to answer this question was Solomon, and he did so in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, the book of Ecclesiastes is basically Solomon's search throughout his life trying to answer this question of what our purpose is. And tonight, I would like to look at what the world says our purpose should be versus what God says, looking at three specific things, and that is wisdom, pleasure, and wealth. The first thing I would like to look at is wisdom. Of course, wisdom is one thing that the world holds really highly. It is, of course, the reason why some of us are here in Tuscaloosa tonight is to gain an earthly wisdom, because we're in college. But is it really the most important thing in our lives? Is it why we are on the planet Earth? Solomon says no. If you will, look at Ecclesiastes chapter 1, starting in verse 12. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 12. I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. This burdensome task God has given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity and grasping for the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. I communed with my heart, saying, Look, I have attained greatness and have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is grasping for the wind. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Solomon tells us here that found that in his search for wisdom, he found it to be grasping for the wind. Now, he explains why he thinks this in chapter 2. So Ecclesiastes 2, verse 15 and 16. So I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity. For there is no more remembrance of the wise and of the fool forever. Since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die? As the fool. Solomon tells us here that the search for earthly knowledge is not our purpose in life. This is reiterated in the New Testament, if you would like to turn to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 17, starting in verse 17. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom of words, lest the cross of Christ be made of no effect. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? For since in the wisdom of God the world through wisdom did not know God, it pleased God through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. For Jews request a sign, and Greeks seek after wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, to the Jews a stumbling block, and to the Greeks foolishness. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. Because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. Paul tells us here that it is not earthly knowledge that is our purpose in life, rather godly knowledge is more important. So if the gain and search for of worldly knowledge is not our purpose here on earth, what is our purpose? Could it possibly be just to have fun and enjoy ourselves? That is the second thing I would like to look at that the world tells us about is pleasure. The world spends a lot of time telling us that in our daily lives here, we should do what we think is fun. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is also should not be the only focus of our life. If you will, turn back to Ecclesiastes, back to chapter 2, starting in verse 1. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, but surely this also was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants, and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor. And this was my reward from all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Solomon tells us of his search in life, where he looked to find meaning in pleasure. And as with wisdom, he finds that there is ultimately no meaning. It is not our purpose on earth. This too is reiterated in the New Testament. If you would please turn to Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3, verses 18 and 19. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are the enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their mind on earthly things. Paul tells us here of people who set their minds on earthly things like pleasure and wisdom and wealth. He tells us that they are enemies of the cross of Christ, and their end is destruction. So certainly then, the meaning of our life here on earth is not pleasure. Maybe then it is wealth. This is another thing that the world really tries to tell us is very important, that throughout our lives we should just be searching to get more and more money. However, Solomon disagrees with this too. If you will, please turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10. He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. So what profit have the owners except to see them with their eyes? The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. There is a severe evil which I have seen under the sun, riches kept for their owner to his hurt. But those riches perish through misfortune, and when he begets a son, there is nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, naked shall he return, to go as he came, and he shall take nothing from his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. And this also is a severe evil. Just exactly as he came, so shall he go. And what profit has he who has labored for the wind? All his days he also eats in darkness, and he has much sorrow and sickness and anger. Solomon tells us here that money cannot satisfy us. The more money we get, the more money we will want. But ultimately, gaining more money is also meaningless. As he says, as we go, we will go as we came, with nothing. So ultimately, all the money we gain is meaningless. This is also seen if we turn over to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 16 through 21. Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God has said to him, Fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. This is a parable told by Jesus of a man who has many riches. He builds bigger barns for himself, but then he dies, and he can't use the many riches that he has gained. And not only did he die, he did not die in a way in living a life that was pleasing to God. So not only is the search for more money ultimately pointless, it can also be dangerous. More money cannot save us. So if all of these things that the earth tell us is important, the search for wisdom and pleasure and money, is not really our purpose, what is our purpose here on earth? Now, luckily for us, in Solomon's search for the purpose of man, he did eventually find an answer. So if you will, please turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 13 and 14. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. Our lives cannot be devoted to the things of the world, like wisdom, pleasure, and wealth. If these things are the focus of our lives, we may live a life that is successful by worldly standards, but it will not be successful by godly standards. To live a successful life by godly standards, we must focus on him and follow his commandments. Tonight, if you find yourself in a place that maybe you haven't been following his commandments and you would like to come forward and ask for prayers, or just for any reason, you can find any one of us and ask for prayers as we stand and as we sing.
I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard about his groaning, of his precious blood's atoning. Then I repented of my sins and won the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is due him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about a mansion he has built for me in glory, and I heard about go beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing and the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing up there the song of victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. You're dismissed with classes.
Testing. Hey. Thank y'all for being here tonight. It's been a while since I have been up to teach, so I'm going to need all the help I can get. And I thought about what we might talk about tonight. Scott is ill tonight. He's having the effects of that second COVID shot, which a lot of us have already had. So, Scott, if you're at home resting, we hope you feel better. And anyway, I'm just glad we've got something we can take now. But I thought about what we might talk about tonight, so I thought we would stop with Scott's topic and just talk about some one question I want to pose to everybody. Why do we tell God, I can't? Does it ever pop in your mind? I thought about one person. Remember a guy who was in the wilderness and he saw a bush that was on fire? And does anybody remember what he said? Or what God said to him when God revealed himself to him in the fire? This is holy ground. And then after that, God makes a challenge to him. And so what did Moses tell God? I can't speak. My brother, I don't know what to do. So God arranged him. And I thought about that today. Today we hear a whole lot about I can't. But what if we changed that viewpoint and if we said, I can. And I'm reminded of a story. Turn to Genesis chapter 6. Let's look at that just for a minute. I thought that would be the topic. And we all know who we're going to read about. His name is Noah. And Noah just did some incredible things. Get my notes here. Okay. So in Genesis chapter 6, look at verse 5. It says, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually and continuing. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that have made them." In verse 8. "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." Okay, well, what does that have to do? Noah was a man just like one of us, maybe serving, and God saw favor in him. But he gives him this incredible task to do. And I was thinking about in my life, the many times that maybe opportunities have come my way, and I've just said, I can't do that. Has anyone else ever done that? I don't think I'm alone. But I thought maybe we could look at Noah's life tonight and just think about a few things that we can pick up from what he did. So the point is what? The Lord is telling him to do what? He comes to Noah and he says, I'm going to destroy the world. So what did the Lord ask him to do? Build a boat, right? A little boat. I did some calculation, and if it's right, a cubit is 1.5 feet. So that would be 3.5 lengths of Bryant-Denny Stadium, the football field that the ark was supposed to be. Now, I'm not a shipbuilder like Burl is, but Burl would know something about that. But God told him how to do it. And what would we do today if God had asked us to do something like that? In fairness, though, even Jesus' disciples were worried about, what was going to happen. If you look at John 14, verses 5 through 7, Thomas is speaking, and, how was Thomas referred to in the Bible? When you think of the name Thomas, what comes to mind? Doubting Thomas. So, in verse 5, it says, Thomas saith unto the Lord, Lord, we know not whither thou goest, and how can we know the way? Well, honestly, that sounds like something I'd say. And Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also, and from henceforth you know him and have seen him. So, in this situation, even Jesus' disciples doubted. I guess that's part of our nature. I'm one of those people, I like confidence, I like patience, and I want it right now. Maybe you are too. But we don't always have the answers. And a lot of times we have to step out on faith to accomplish what God wants us to. So the first thing I see is Noah did not miss the boat. Somebody had to build the boat, and it looked like Noah had to do it. And was it one of these things, bro, where you just slap it together and there it is? Maybe with my saw I'd cut it. Oh, that looks good. It may not float though. I did a study not too long ago. He was talking about the shape of the ark and how awesome it is, the size of the huge ships that go on the seas. If they are constructed with the same type of dimensions, they float. But they found that increasing the size, it sank, and making it less. It's something about the structure of the ark, the way it's made, the proportions, that is perfect. And so my point is this. God always gives us what we need. I say, what? Does anyone else feel this way? If I just had this, I know I could do better. I could do this for the Lord. But you know what? God gives each of us what? What do we have to do? What do we call our abilities? You know, it's the parable. Talents. Okay. Our talents. Some people are 1 talent. Some people are 10. Some people are 100. But if we use our talents, what does God do out of weakness? He always delivers. And it's His promises. So I thought about that, you know. So we might get discouraged, but like Noah, we should stay in the boat. What's the boat for us? What's a place of safety, spiritual safety for us? The church. You know, I can be feeling really bad. I can have some bad or just great dread. I can talk to Burl, Rick, others, and they encourage me. And the church is a place that we need, that we find encouragement. I was talking to Burl one time, and he said something very wise. We were saying, you know, I just don't see how we could do this. Maybe we should just quit. And Burl very wisely said, if not us, then who? God doesn't ask when He brings us an assignment or we have something presented to us for us to walk away from it. But He wants us to accept it. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. Okay. Point 2 that I saw here. We're all in the same boat. Aren't we all fellow Christians? Joe, what's the church? Is it these walls of this building?
I'm sorry.
What is the church? Is it just these walls, this building? It's the people. So wherever the people are is where the church is. And what is it that we all share? The love of God. Among other things. But you know, even in Jesus' day, the world, Jesus predicted that the world would have problems. And Mark 3, verse 24. Please turn there. Mark 3, 24. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end. How powerful is Satan in this world? Does anybody express an opinion about that? Well, it says he's found in principalities and governments, in all sorts of places. And the thing about Satan is, and it's kind of scary, he's not divided. Wow, shouldn't we as God's children be united? I heard this a long time ago from my dad. I have 4 brothers. There's 5 of us in our family. That's kind of a big family. And mother wanted a daughter, but it just didn't happen. And after 5, she said, enough. That's it. So there was 5 of us. But anyway, Dad had us all in the living room one night, and he just related a story he had heard. And the story is there was a man who had 5 sons, and the sons argued all the time. That's my shirt. That's mine. I should have this. And so he brought them in one night, and he gave them a stick. Okay, just a simple stick, limb. And he asked each one to break it. And of course, each person, hey, I'm strong, and they broke it easily. And then he reached down and he had 5 more sticks, but he had wrapped them up with rope or twine or something real strong. And he had passed it to the first one. He said, now break it. And you know what? The guy expended a lot of energy, but he could not break that bundle of sticks. And each person went around the room, and they all finally gave up and said, I can't. Well, like Noah, those 8 souls worked together. And maybe for us in the church, we should work together more. Central is a wonderful place. I've been here a long time. And I've seen some marvelous people come through this congregation. Some are not with us anymore. But the story is always the same. It's there. The work goes on, and the people do the work. It's not the elders. It's not the minister. It's the people. They're always doing. They're always taking care. And I'm so amazed by that. So we should have unity. And you know, as I read this passage here in Genesis, that's another thing I see. Noah had unity. All right, 3. It helps to plan ahead. You know, God told Noah to build an ark. And you know what? How soon was it that he got it built? A month? When? About 100 years. And also, Noah was a person who was working each day, but you know what else he was getting from the people that walked by? That guy's crazy. You know, he received criticism. How about us in our jobs? How about us in our businesses or whatever? Do we let criticism keep us from doing what we should for the Lord? Matthew 24, verse 41 through 43. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill. One shall be taken, the other left. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. The older I get, the more serious that a passage appears to me as I read it. Because we're not promised tomorrow. And I'm not trying to be negative or gloomy. I'm just simply saying, you know, there's no guarantee. I bet Rick could calculate all these securities and tell us when they'll come due and all that and what percentage this is going to gain over another one. But we can't do that with our lives. Because our lives don't belong to us. Who they belong to? Who gave us life? God did. God gave us life. So, you know, Don Wheeler can't make all these plans with a surety because it's God that holds the world in his hand. I'm amazed. Everett and I were talking one time, and we were talking about how the world is constructed. And Job mentions the string, the foundation of the world is held on nothing. But God knows where those points are. God knows what it takes to keep this universe going and together. And so what that should tell us, though, you know, what I see here from Noah, he planned. He planned. Do we plan to worship the Lord each Lord's Day? Do we give of our means? Some people, I understand, just that's the first thing they do. They set aside what they want to give to the Lord. And it's not how much you give, it's the percentage of what you own, right? Was it 10% that was done in the Old Testament, but we're supposed to give, I guess, till it hurts. So we know we've given God the priority. And we should do that. Because life is just uncertain. So Noah planned ahead. And you know what? 100 years before the flood came, it wasn't raining. Noah said, I got plenty of time. Not when he saw what God had him to do. Okay, this is one that hits me. Stay fit. When you're 70 years old, you may be required to do something that is really big. And here's Noah and his family. You know, they lived a lot longer than in the Old Testament. Because I guess God arranged it that way. But in those times, you know, God would call on them to do something. I'm 70 years old. I'm 80 years old. I'm 85 years old. It doesn't matter. Rick told us last week, Caleb was how old? 80, 84, 85, something like that. He was up there. But you know what? He did what God asked him to do. Does anyone remember a guy that rode a motorcycle named Evel Knievel? Anybody remember him? One of his more spectacular crashes, trying to jump buses and such, was at Las Vegas. And he had just cleared this tremendous new record, 14, 15, 16 buses. And he came down and his wheel was just off a little. And as he rolled forward, here comes disaster. He said he hadn't planned for that. None of us plan for the things that life gives us. And you know, I'm reminded of this. One day, years ago, our oldest granddaughter, Kate, we were at the beach. She's 4 years old, and she sets out to build a little sand castle, and we're out sort of near the waves as they're coming in. So I watch her a little bit, and I get down there. Granddad gets down there with her, and that's one of those times when I was known as really good old granddad. So I'm down there on my knees, and we're doing this, and we build this nice little sand castle. She turned around, and then the waves decided to come in, and it wiped it clear. And she looked up at me, and she said, "It's not fair, Granddad. It's just not fair." Life is not fair to us. So, when we are given a possession as valuable as our body is, because that houses our spirit, right? We should take care of it. And getting back to what I said about Evel Knievel, he regretted doing the things he'd done. But he was driven because he wanted to be famous. Of course, we all remember his last episode where he tried to go over the Grand Canyon in a rocket or something. That didn't work out well for him either. Anyway, listen to what is said in the Bible. 1 Corinthians 6. 1 Corinthians 6, verses 18 through 20. It covers three things. But it says this: "Flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. What? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and you are not your own? For you are bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." Wow. When you read about how God created man, what does it say about Adam? How did he bring him to life? You know, when you think about the movies, you see Frankenstein, you know, and they got the electricity going, and they're trying to get it going and all that stuff, and they finally bring him to life. How did God bring Adam to life? What did he do? Breathe into him the breath of life. Who but God can do that? That's amazing. I can't even fathom that. That's so beyond my ability to understand. But God gives us the body we have, so shouldn't we take care of it? There are things that happen. You know, you can be just fine and walk out the door there and hit a piece of ice, and down you go, and there you are in the emergency room with a broken leg or something. That can happen, but I'm not talking about those kind of things. I'm talking about where we willfully abuse our body. So apparently, going back to our friend Noah here, he was ready. God said do it, and he was ready. You don't hear any argument. You don't hear him really fuss too much about it, but he was ready to go to work for God. Okay, another thing I see here is that, and I've already mentioned it, Noah did not listen to the critics. Don't you know there were people as he was working, he was probably trying to tell others about it. You know, that the world's going to end here. God's going to destroy the world, and nobody believed him. Can you imagine preaching a sermon, Scott, for a long time and there's no responses? Well, that's exactly what happened. So here he is speaking, and he has no responses. That doesn't mean he didn't live with criticism. Has anyone ever been in a situation where they were uncomfortable? I think we don't do things because we're afraid we will be criticized. Yeah. And that's where I was going. I can remember as a teenager in the 7th grade, and some guys were doing stuff that was really terrible. I did not participate in it, but I sat there and didn't say a thing. I wonder what God thought about me at that point. I did not have the courage to speak up. That doesn't mean you have to be combative or mean, but it just says, you know, I didn't take a stand for the Lord at that time, and I should have. And Noah did not listen to the critics. So he built this ark, 450 feet long, 75 feet high, and 50 feet wide. And then he did all the things, pitch it with this way and that way. He put all this stuff in it to make it waterproof. And you know what happened when the rain came? It floated. It came up. Just like God said it would. Revelation chapter 2. I've always admired the church. Jesus is speaking to a special church. Everybody remember the name of that church? They were in poverty. Does anybody remember their name? Church at Smyrna. It's found in verses 9 through 11. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are the Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Fear none of these things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit said unto the churches, that he that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. Now he's talking to the members of the church at Smyrna. Does anybody remember anything about them? They did not have a good tax plan. They were very poor. They were in fact in poverty, but yet they gave all they had. And the Lord saw it and commended them for it. I can't imagine that, you know. Can you imagine how the Lord felt when he was betrayed? Can you imagine how the Lord felt when he was criticized over and over? Can you imagine raising somebody from the dead and making a family very happy? And somebody is over here criticizing. But you know what? The Lord lived with it. And I guess what I'm saying is, Don Wheeler, as I look at this, I shouldn't listen to the criticism. What does it say about if we're persecuted? Does it say if? How's it worded? When. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Not if you will be, but when. When you are. Well, what did I do wrong? Nothing. It's just Satan is looking for a way to tear down what you're trying to accomplish through the Lord. Yes, sir.
So, what you described is one of the lessons I've always taken from the story is the fidelity of God's promise. My phone, my Bible order. I notice Everett is. I believe that there are a couple, 3 times there's some statement like, and know that all God commanded.
Yeah.
And there's this incredible promise, and it takes a long time to come to fruition. But all this stays true. He knows when he commanded, and what we learn from this is over this long period of time that there's kind of incredible promise that God is faithful. And in our lives, we were talking about criticism we're going to get on your employment.
Yeah.
And one of the things that helps me kind of walk through that stuff is the fidelity of God. I know that if I keep God's commandments, and I know that promise is waiting.
If you didn't hear what Rick said, he talked about the fidelity of God, how God keeps his promise. And Rick was pointing out that Noah did all God had commanded. Not just part of it, or not just the part he wanted to do, but everything God commanded. And Rick said that as he's lived his life, he remembers that promise that God has promised, and he's always delivered, right? Rick?
Yes.
And I think that it's important to remember that to do all we can. We can't just do a little bit. Like
Yeah.
we can choose.
Yeah.
I get on my children all the time. I'm like, clean your room. Well, so you ought to just pick up the clothes, but never mind this or that. That's not how it works. We've got to do everything that God asks us to do in order for it to work out the way that He'll.
If you didn't hear, she's saying that just doing the part of the promise doesn't work. And she used the example of her children, that when she asked them to clean up their room, they may do part of it. But to get the reward or the fulfillment of the promise, we have to do what God has commanded. Why is that important? I mean, do we have choices? If we're going to serve God faithfully, as has been said, do we have a choice about what we do? Does God love us? Let me ask that question. Does God love us? I think with all His being, He loves us. But He's not my buddy. He's not my pal. He's God. That's hard for me to see sometimes because I want to be close to Him. And when I'm praying to Him sometimes, I know He's got the feeling I'm trying to project, but there again, I'm talking to the Creator of the universe, the one who spoke life into existence. And when He says it, it can't be changed. There's no conditions that I can put, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's no conditions I can put on being acceptable with God except that I do what He's commanded. Anyone else? Charlotte.
I thought about the fact that Noah had 100 years to do what God said, and we as humans now we get 60, 70, hopefully a lot of us are in 100 years, whether we make it or not. But it's like, of course, he lived a lot longer than that. But the fact is that during that 100 years, he persevered. So that's an example for us that during that our 100 years, we persevered.
Thank you, Charlotte. Charlotte said about the perseverance thing. I think the people, you say, well, what's wrong with these people? They're in poverty. They don't have any money for food, so why are they happy? The only thing I can understand is that they knew there was an eternal reward awaiting on them on that day, and they believed it. Do we internalize what God has promised? We may read it and say, yeah. But do we do that? We should. We should. Okay. Another point that I saw from Noah. We should build on the highest ground we can. You know, it might be easier to come down there and build a house on the lowest place. I think Rick's daughter's an engineer. Our daughter's an engineer. We've got a lot of people that know a lot about building sitting right here. So, if you build a house on unprepared soil, what do you think is going to happen? Will it stand? Probably won't. Especially when the rain comes and the waters go up. I'm going back to VBS. Wow, yeah, anybody? The rains came down and the floods came up. I do remember that. So, yeah, that can definitely test us. But the point is, and it's something that y'all have already said, Noah did what God commanded. Every step. Every step. Why? Well, it's because Noah didn't do what he thought was best. He knew what God said to do, and he did it. And maybe some of us can get in trouble with that because we can't change what God has said to do. He is God. He loves us with all his being, but he can't do that. Yes, sir.
You go and read through Hebrews 11 and all the characters of faith.
Yes.
Noah has always been one of my favorites. And I read somewhere someone said that the greatest demonstration of faith in all of Scripture was when Noah walked out there at the base of that gopher tree with the axe in his hand. If it's like a lot of scholars say it never rained, it's just a point in the mist,
Yeah.
brought moisture up. And walk out there with that gopher tree, build a boat, and it never rained, that's remarkable.
If you couldn't hear, Randy is saying, it's amazing that Noah got his axe and went out to this gopher wood tree in a place where it had never rained, and for 100 years it didn't rain. Yet he had the faith to do that and cut that tree down and cut the other trees. And I don't know how he got all that wood together, but God provided. So yeah, Randy knows a lot about building. He's an engineer.
I bet Rick says day one was tough, because that's really crazy.
Yeah.
Day two, but by day, 900, whatever, he's doing what it's a pattern.
Yes.
It's a pattern.
Yes. And that's a great thing. That's a great way to put it, a pattern. Could we not make our lives to do what God said all the way through and make it a pattern, because a lot of times I'll be thinking of ways, Dom, are you going to say something? You look like you're ready to.
I just got a ready process.
But one thing about it, that pattern, once in our lives as new Christians, when we get criticized for something, it hurts, and we don't want to really admit to our peers much about our faith because of being made fun of or something.
Yeah.
But that pattern, in our Christian walk, like today, mine and yours, that criticism, it runs off of us like water off of a duck.
Burl's telling us about the pattern, how we make it part of us. I can remember, I'm not divulging anything that's not personal. I can remember sitting in the elders' room, but these elders are in this room. And I said, that hurt me. And Burl wisely said, well, Don, we just got to have tougher skin. Because Satan's always doing his job. And we got to remember to not let what he says bother us. Okay, so we build on higher ground. Why? Because it's the most stable. Our daughter Julie just bought a house a few miles down the way from where they are. And as they got the analysis back of the pot plant, the thing was built on a rock. So they didn't have to worry about the foundation being sheared or stuff because it's pretty solid. And the people that worked on it quit the first time, because they were trying to dig for a pool and they weren't getting through that rock. So you know how they did finally get a pool? They got permission from all the neighborhood and all that stuff and a variance, and they had to bring dynamite in and somebody who knows what they're doing. Now, not Julie, but whoever had owned the house years ago. Blew it up, blew this rock up so that they could make the foundation for a pool. Anyway, that's impressive. Build on higher ground. You know what? I like this one. For safety's sake, travel in pairs. And I get that from reading in the New Testament where Paul and Silas and Barnabas, they're all going together 2 by 2 doing the Lord's work. So there must be something to it. Oh, wait a minute. How did the Lord arrange the ark when they came in? 2 by 2. That's Chuck Willer reading that. 2 and 2. We'll be back with you. They would bring, God had them bringing in 2 by 2 or in pairs. So there must be safety in pairs. Turn to Mark 16, 15 and 16. And this is how they did it. And they're acting on the promises of God. We know this passage. And he said unto them, verse 15, Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth shall not be damned. So, very important. Very important. You know what? Our family begins with 2. The husband and the wife. Then they add to the family with the children. But it begins in 2. So 2 is a good number. So it all began with Noah and his wife. And then they added their sons. Okay. Now, I thought this was interesting. Think about this concept. It took 100 years to build it. So speed wasn't exactly in the mix here. It's not always an advantage. We always talk about, well, who's the fastest? When you see 2 track runners going, well, who can outrun somebody? Well, in this case, speed was not the advantage because there was also turtles aboard the ark. There were cheetahs, and there were turtles, being some of the animals. So, it's not always how it's come. You remember the story of the tortoise and the hare? That interesting story is always, remember they won't have a race and the hare or the rabbit, well, he was just egging it on. He was being so ugly and making fun of the old tortoise. Tortoise got tired of it. The old turtle, he said, all right, I'll race you. The rabbit goes off and has a nap. And he wakes up and he realizes, oh, there's a race on, as the turtle crosses the finish line. Kind of the same thing with Noah here. 100 years it hadn't rained. This guy's been preaching 100 years with no responses. And yet he's still doing it. And like Rick said, the last part, the 909, or last part. And then they get to year 100, and then they go in the ark. God shuts the door, and guess what comes down out of the sky? God keeps his promise. What time is it, y'all? 8 o'clock. All right. One last one. Did you know that the Titanic was built by professionals and the ark was built by amateurs? Depends on the plan. Thank y'all so much. And Scott, I hope you feel better and come back quickly. But thank y'all so much for your comments and your attention. We're dismissed.